Everyone, Richard from Digital Foundry here, and a very interesting game was released this week. It's a Nintendo Switch port of Ninja Theory's Hellblade. Now, haven't seen much of this prior to launch, and suffice to say, when it did actually come out and footage started to creep across YouTube, we were kind of blown away. In fact, our colleague Tom Morgan said, "What kind of witchcraft is this?" And today we're going to kind of figure out how this was done. And joining me on this journey, John Linneman.
Hey Rich, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. So this is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, you look at the footage here and you think to yourself, whoa, how is this possible? And there's quite an interesting range of techniques and smoke and mirrors going on here. But the bottom line is the game actually looks rather impressive for a AAA title running on a mobile chipset.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an ambitious one because this is truly a gorgeous looking game on the more modern platforms. I think it first showed up on PS4 and PC, but I think the best console version is Xbox One X.
Yeah.
But, you know, bringing something like this to Switch, it's running Unreal Engine 4, not an easy task. And this was ported by the excellent porting studio QLOC that's done some great work in the past. And I can imagine this was quite a job. And in bringing it to Switch, they made some interesting changes. But I guess we should start with just like the basics. So as you might guess, the resolution took quite a hit. And that's only natural, and that's usually the case with ports of Unreal Engine games to the Switch anyway. So what we're looking at here is a dynamic resolution. When you're in docked mode, it sort of varies from a maximum of 720p, and it can drop as low as 576p. Whereas when you play in portable mode, again, the ceiling is 720p, but the floor here is actually 400p. And it sort of seems to hang below 720p most of the time I've found. It's fairly soft, but again, the game has a very nice or aggressive temporal anti-aliasing solution, so it doesn't really look jaggy. It just has a very soft and blurry look to it, I guess you could say, which, you know, it kind of works in a game like this. So it's blurry, but the image quality isn't really that big of a deal.
And the assets actually look pretty good, and the environments are fairly well preserved. I mean, when we first saw that comparison video that dropped literally, I think, the day it released, in fact, we were thinking to ourselves that this was really impressive work. But, you know, when you look at it a bit more forensically, you can see that, you know, to transition down from, well, we're using PS4 here as a sort of obvious comparison point, you know, transitioning down from a 1.8 teraflop machine down to a mobile chipset. There are a lot of compromises that have been made, but I think by and large they've done a pretty good job of sort of mitigating the worst impacts to quality there.
Yeah, and so to me this kind of port is very fascinating because it almost recalls the old days, you know, when you were porting games to different machines. A lot of sacrifices were necessary, and clearly a lot of sacrifices were made here. So I think there's a few things to discuss. First of all, there's the cutscenes, and this one is really interesting to me. It seems that most of the main cutscenes in the game are now full motion video clips. And they found a way to seamlessly fade between those video clips and the real-time gameplay. It's almost like a crossfade. If you've ever done, like, you know, video editing, you'd be very familiar with this basic effect, but that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a crossfade, and if you look closely, you'll spot it when it happens. But it's surprisingly seamless when it does. But also, the video clips themselves seem to be rendered at a higher resolution than what you typically get in game.
Right.
But they do seem to be based on the Switch visuals. So it does look different. Even though they're full motion videos, they didn't just pull the visuals from the PC or PS4 version here. This is based on the Switch version. And as such, it does look different. And from what we can tell, for sure on the PC, and I think it's the same on the other consoles, the cutscenes were originally real-time. So you play out fully real-time, and they've obviously switched over to video for the Switch. So that's one way they've mitigated the performance demands, I think. And then I guess the next thing then has more to do with asset quality and the way they draw in detail. So obviously textures are lower resolution across the board, perhaps. I need to look more closely at everything, but you can certainly see it on the character models. They're much lower res. The world textures appear blurrier overall. Texture filtering is more aggressive.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they've pushed up the LODs, so distant detail is reduced. There's fewer objects in the distance. The way they draw foliage has changed. The tree textures appear different. It's a lot of things like that where you really see a significant difference that at first glance it doesn't feel that way, but when you actually compare it, you're like, oh, this actually does look pretty different from the original version.
Yeah, and this is why I was talking about smoke and mirrors earlier, because the way that they've done it, unless you do the side-by-side, I mean, particularly, I think in common with a lot of Switch games, if you play this docked on a big screen, the compromises are probably a bit too obvious. However, on a handheld, you can get away with it and it kind of works. And I think the way that they've made the compromises is fascinating. So, some of the Switch's most spectacular elements are cutscenes, and they are real-time in the full game, as you said. But because they've moved to video sequences, they can be as complex as the developer wants, and it still looks awesome. So you still get those awesome moments. They're just delivered in an entirely different way. And the irony is, of course, that the image quality on those moments, because it's video, is higher than the low-resolution gameplay, which I just find mind-boggling. And and I guess the other thing is that it is a kind of game that's very claustrophobic, so the environments are quite tight. I think this is just by design to give a kind of oppressive feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, the actual sort of scope of the environments is a good match for a constrained piece of hardware. And even when you do have the big wide open spaces, it's all very foggy and very sort of drawn in. So again, it's ripe for a Switch conversion. But if you do the side-by-sides with the PS4, particularly in the intro sequence where you're in the canoe, basically Ninja Theory are throwing the kitchen sink at us in terms of post-processing effects, and running that side by side. The Switch version is a pretty good facsimile, but obviously the rendering quality on PS4 there is on a completely different level. But it works.
Yeah, it certainly does, and that's kind of the impressive thing. And in a way, so this makes a surprisingly good mobile experience, and part of that comes down to the sound design. This is one of the few games on the market that is recorded using, or was created using binaural audio. I'm not sure if they just used a head mic to record it or if it's done in post, but either way, when you play the game with headphones, it really creates the illusion of people talking directly into your ear. It's actually somewhat frightening, and it's very effective. It sounds amazing, and it's exactly the kind of thing you might envision doing when playing in portable mode. Because, most people play on your big TV, probably not going to plug in headphones. I mean, maybe, but it seems less likely. Where here, you're playing in portable mode, it just makes sense to do that. So in that sense, on the small screen with headphones on, it's still a very immersive experience, despite the fact that it's obviously been cut back pretty significantly. So yeah, it's an impressive conversion then overall, even though this is the thing about Switch, and people are always like, John, why are you so soft on the Switch game, so to speak, when you're harsh on others? And it really just has to come down to you have to understand the hardware that you're targeting. Like if you see like an early polygonal game running on a Mega Drive, for instance, it's not going to look great, but you're impressed because of the hardware that it's using, right? And that's kind of the same thing here. I mean, the Switch, it's a modern platform, but it is significantly less capable in terms of just raw horsepower compared to the consoles. I mean, it falls well below even the original Xbox One, if we're honest, right? So I appreciate the artistry and the technique and the challenge of bringing a game like this, like Wolfenstein, like Doom, to a portable platform that draws such little power. Like, that to me is neat, even if the end results are obviously not as impressive as the original versions. And that's definitely the case here.
And when you've got a game like this, which was never designed, never in a million years designed to run on a handheld, and there it is. And, it's just really impressive. And actually, if we move on to performance...
Oh, yes.
Interesting stuff here as well. I mean, it's not without fault that frame pacing is poor. And so essentially, yes, it is 30 frames a second, which is a credit to the system. But it's, again, 16, 33, 50 milliseconds. Then there's these kind of bizarre sort of lurches and stutters that crop up occasionally. So, performance isn't this game's strong suit.
Yeah.
That is a concern, but at the same time, you kind of have to go onto the enhanced consoles to get a really consistent experience. If we look at the PS4 here, they actually still, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, I thought this was fixed, but, I captured this morning and it's running unlocked and it feels really jerky. So, I don't know. But actually, yeah, if we sort of go back to the platform in hand and do a direct docked to portable comparison, they run the same. It's the same profile side by side. It's really quite impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's really just a difference of the resolution hangs lower on average when in portable mode.
Yeah.
But the actual performance is basically the same. And like you said, I mean, this is the one area where I do feel it's kind of a disappointment. Bad frame pacing is one of my bugbears. It's a real shame that happens, and it seems to crop up a lot with Unreal Engine 4 games that are capped at 30 frames per second. Some developers have figured this out, others just haven't seemed to be able to pull it off, and I'd really love to better understand what's going on here that's causing this. Are people not seeing it, or is there something else internally that's causing the issue? Either way, it's not good. I mean, it does resemble, I guess, a From Software game, or I guess more aptly, it's like Dangerous Driving running on the base consoles. Again, 30 FPS cap, and you get that highly variable frame time over there. But like you said, I mean, on the other base consoles, the performance isn't great either. I think the only console version I think that really does run very well is the Xbox One X enhanced version.
Yeah, I'd have to review the PS4 Pro one as well, because I seem to recall that wasn't bad at all, but was a lower resolution. I think it went down to as low as 720p, if memory serves.
I think that's what it is. So you're right, the upper end consoles I think do deliver a pretty good experience, and of course the PC as well. But so in that sense, it's kind of like, would you rather have an unlocked frame rate or bad frame pacing? I mean, neither is optimal. Maybe QLOC will see this video and be like, hey, we can fix that problem, because that has happened before. So I would be hopeful for that. So if they could fix that, then this should be a stable 30 frames per second, which is key.
Aside from the performance, which is pretty much like for like, and obviously the resolution takes a big hit between docked and mobile, are there any other sort of visual differences to separate the two?
I mean, from what I can tell, they look extremely consistent, both in portable and docked mode. I mean, it really mainly seems to come down to some of did you notice any detail called back in some of these instances here?
I'm not sure about that, but the shading, ambient occlusion or something like it, seems to be pared back a bit on portable side.
Yeah, actually you're right. Looking at it again here, you're right. It absolutely does appear to be subtly different. And that actually raises an interesting point that I think I wanted to mention earlier, is the lighting in general. This is something that has changed dramatically from the other version. And I'm not sure technically what's changed, but when you boot up the game on PC or the other platforms, you'll notice they have a logo for Enlighten, which is a global illumination solution, sort of a pre-calculated solution that a lot of games have used. It looks excellent. That's now missing from the Switch version, that logo and any reference to it. So I have this weird suspicion that maybe they dropped Enlighten and bring it to the Switch. Maybe it was too heavy for the Switch to use and they found another solution. Maybe it's just been tweaked. I don't know what's going on there, but I think you can see here from the comparison that the lighting is extremely different. And yeah, it's pared back even more in portable mode. But one other thing I wanted to mention, since we had talked about the sound, so this is a curious thing. I think so Tom helped us capture some of this footage, I believe, and some of this footage actually has sort of sound glitches,
yeah,
which sound like this.
To break the seal, align the ravens with the mark of Valravan.
Kind of bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, so the thing is, though, is on my Switch here, I was not able to reproduce this, so I'm not sure if it was a bug or if this is an issue with that Switch, or if it's something with the SD card it was installed to. It's really not clear to me where that problem came from, because it is different between the two, and that's usually uncommon with these closed platform games. So that is something to think about, and maybe again worth checking out from a bug fixing perspective. But other than that, it seems solid.
Okay, good stuff. So that is Hellblade on Nintendo Switch. A really interesting release also because, well, Microsoft now own Ninja Theory, who produced this game, and they're producing Switch games, and Cuphead is coming as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's an interesting time, actually, seeing... this game has appeared on PS4, obviously, and Ninja Theory had a Sony relationship, but now that they're owned by Microsoft, and then there's the Cuphead thing, it does kind of seem like there's this new relationship forming, as if maybe Microsoft views Nintendo more as like, a colleague as opposed to competition. It's very strange, but it's cool to see that this cooperation can happen.
Yeah, definitely. And if it produces interesting games like this, I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's wrap this up then. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Ring the bell for instant notifications whenever a new digital Foundry video drops. But that's all from us for now. Thanks for watching.